Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our September 29th, 2025 regular council meeting. The recommendation is that a meeting be held today at 6:30 p.m. May I have a mover to get the meeting open? Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. And I will jump right into the recommendation to go into closed in accordance with Section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act to consider the following: sanitary lateral on Victoria Street, Section 239(2)(e), litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favour? That carries unanimously, and we will return at approximately 7 p.m. for the remainder of our open meeting. I would be looking for a mover and a seconder to reconvene an open session at 7 p.m. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. We've gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. We do have one addition to the agenda this evening, and that is a second delegation from Barry Wolf on bylaw 25-58, and that is item number 13.5 in your agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Martin?
Yes, and sorry for being slow to the draw. I did fill out my form, though. So on the affiliation, sorry, I was not prepared. On the affiliation for policy and minor sports discount, I have a pecuniary interest as the community prevention officer for the New Hamburg Firebirds.
Thank you for acknowledging that, and we will split that vote so that you're able to vote on the remaining groups once we get to that part of the agenda. Any other disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We do have our minutes from the previous meetings of August 25th, 2025 regular council meeting and September 8th committee of the whole to be adopted as presented. May I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favour, that carries unanimously. As I noted, we do have a delegation this evening. We actually have two. Both are by Barry Wolf. The first is on item 12.1, and the second, like I mentioned before, is on 13.5. Barry, you know the rules at this point, so I will omit reading them. Just ask that you abide by them, and we'll call you up once we get to those parts in the agenda. We do have two pieces of correspondence. Did anybody want to pull any items from correspondence? Councillor Martin, and you may speak to the item you want to pull.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Salonen. So both of the correspondence have to do with the speed camera, and I have over the last few weeks a few thoughts on it. I knew that these people had raised concerns, and I encouraged them to share their concerns with council. In the last few weeks, this topic has raised public attention. Our Premier has made comments, and it looks like the province, if I've understood correctly, the province may be making a decision about speed cameras. And our member of provincial parliament has also publicly posted about the speed cameras and called them a cash grab. So with those thoughts in mind, I have mixed feelings about the speed camera. I know that there are people in the public who are opposed to them. I also realize that within a few kilometers, there is a difference. The one speed camera, the posted speed limit changes depending on the time of day and the time of year, and the other one does not. And so some people have expressed confusion around that. I also realize that the research is showing that there is safety from having the speed cameras. So I simply wanted to acknowledge it. I don't know if other people want to comment on it, but I realize it looks like the province is going to be making a decision. So.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to concur with my peer here. I've actually received quite a few calls on this, and unfortunately, as someone who's received a couple of those tickets, I don't necessarily disagree with them, but I've also received quite a few calls on it.
Thank you. Any other comments on these correspondence items? I will just make a few comments. I think the last time we mentioned it in this chamber, the following day we were having the report to Regional Council, which then I think, like the week after the announcement was made by the province. But I did want to provide some interesting findings that I found in the regional council presentation, including Wilmot got, I would say notice, I don't want to say award because it's not something to celebrate, got notice that New Dundee's speed camera picked up the worst offender going 142 kilometers an hour in front of New Dundee Public School at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. So I know that there's lots of controversy and questions over the program itself, but speeding does exist, and in some cases at really extreme speeds in our own communities. That was one that really kind of blew me away. And then, yes, Councillor Martin, you're exactly correct. The province has made comment that they plan on cancelling the program, but we are still waiting to see what that tabled legislation looks like. But Councillor Martin?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sallin. And maybe just the other point that I didn't say before, to remind people, our township does not have jurisdiction in the sense that we didn't put the cameras in and we don't receive any revenue. So maybe people, it's good to publicly remind people again that the decision is not made here.
Yes, absolutely. It is a regional decision and it's only on regional roads at this current time. And there was one other thing I was going to say that I've completely forgotten. So if I think of it, I'll let you guys know. But other than that, yes, it is a regional issue. So I would just say continue to watch as the province proceeds with their legislation that they're suggesting to propose. We do have 6 items on consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull any items at this time for discussion? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sallin. First of all, 11.1, the council meeting schedule, that's just simply to thank the people involved. I believed it would be the clerk and deputy clerk. I was looking at all of the dates, and it gets complicated, and so I appreciated going through that. So I express that appreciation. And then 11.2, I'd like to pull that as well. And
you may speak to 11.2.
So thank you, through you, Mayor Sallin. So on this one, it's just simply to recognize that we do get some money out of this, that at times throughout the year, and also when we look at the budget, we look at spending money and trying to figure that out. And I was just thinking, I guess it's a kind of appreciation. It's great that we can experience some revenue from this. And so I just wanted to comment on the positive part to that as we approach our budget.
That's great. Thank you. Any other items? Councillor Cressman.
Point of order. I think I'm too disruptive in my current state, so I will be exiting stage left.
Before you exit stage left, was there any burning topic that you wanted to be here for the discussion? I'm happy to move the agenda up to accommodate.
I think the one that I was interested in and had a few questions related to the remuneration for the next council and mayor, and I know we have a delegate that was going to speak to that. So maybe if I keep my comments limited and see if we can get through that one, and then I will see if we can.
Absolutely. That is technically the next item if we just get a vote on the consent agenda. Are you okay then to, I just don't want you to miss, I know that you want to be here for all of it, but I don't want you to miss any burning questions. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I wanted to pull quickly 11.5 and just ask a question regarding the cost increase.
Yes, you may do that.
Yeah. So through the mayor to Director Vanderwall, just curious, the valve chamber build, I noted that we had budgeted 150, but we're looking for an additional set of funds between 70 and 80,000. I'm just curious what's driving that massive cost increase on the project.
Through the mayor, this was one of the new items that we have put in the municipality. We do not have a lot of valve chambers that we've put in. We did ask to the industry. There's a wide range of pricing. I believe I was told anywhere between $150,000 to $500,000. We did not fully account for some of the complexities of being on a one-way main, being in the, it's actually MTO right-of-way at that location. So there are some complexities that we had not taken into account when we did our original estimate on it.
Thank you. And then a follow-up. So if we put the investment into this, do we expect that we'll see a return on tracking the inflow and infiltration? I mean, over what time frame do you expect to recover those costs?
Through the Mayor, the area that we're looking at is a private condominium development that has been flagged as having a high I&I. We are looking at putting a meter in there and putting the the district meter chamber in there so that we get an idea of what's going on. I can't really fully say what to, or a financial return on this one, because when we get the findings, we will have to bring that back to council to see which way council wants to move with it. Our hope would be that if we have problems, we would reach out to the owner there and they would get rectified. In terms of a return on investment in that sense, it is difficult at this time to say, other than we know that that is a high area for infiltration and inflow, and we cannot go in those roads as we do not own them.
And thank you, through the chair. So I guess I would ask the question, I mean, what is the purpose for this then? I mean, it's a big spend of funds to basically just uncover or prove that this community is causing problems through their private water system. And we don't have an anticipated, I guess, return on or cost recovery on this. So I'm just looking at it saying, is this truly necessary, or is this just a project so that we can measure and sort of test our theory that this is causing a ton of problems?
Through the Mayor, it is, so for a development like this, we generally would have, for our security of supply, a meter chamber complete with backflows. It was not required at the time based on the age of the infrastructure. So from that perspective, it is beneficial for us to put it in just to protect our supply. The other side of it is we are unable to quantify and work with the property owners without fully understanding the amount of water loss and inflow that is coming from this. So we would be unable to move forward with identifying where the water or where the inflow is coming from for this area. I don't know if that answers what you're asking, but
through the chair, I suppose you've answered it partially, but more so protection of our own water supply and system is basically the main purpose of this. And a secondary fact is the measurement and subsequent tracking that we're going to get from it. Is that fair to say?
Through the Mayor, that would be a fair assessment of what we're looking at.
Councillor Creswell?
Yes, I'm going to have a follow-up question to that. Currently, the outflow in the wastewater is determined and they are assessed the cost of that, correct?
Through the Mayor, I believe they are all individually metered houses within the development. So no, they are based on the water usage within the development itself.
And then again, a point that we had discussed prior to council starting, we have to take over a private water system when the owner determines that they don't want to deliver any longer. What is the situation with the condominium when they determine that the water system is going to, I'm not suggesting in this case, but in a case, if the condominium determines that repairs is more than what they wanted to take on, can they walk away from a water system and it becomes the township's responsibility or liability?
Through the mayor, not that I'm aware of that they would be able to do that. However, with the meter chamber and with the flow meter at the end, council would have the option to start billing based on actual water usage in and out. So it would be in their benefit to address any leakages that they had in their system, but I am not aware of it.
Any other questions? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I also wanted to pull 11.3.
Yes, you may. Any other on 11.5? No. Okay, you may speak to that, Councillor.
Oh, sorry. Did I speak too soon?
No. I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any more on 11.5. You can speak to 11.3.
So this fire service boundary agreement, it would also be an appreciation to Chief Leeson as well as a question. I think it's great that we have a cooperation with our neighboring fire service, and I think this is not the only one. I don't know how hard it is to keep up agreements with neighboring fire services, but it seems to me that that's a great way that we can manage things both with our costs as well as their costs. And so if you have thoughts on it, I'm interested in them, want to appreciate that you're doing this, and is there any way that we can enhance this? But I think it's great that we have these agreements.
Thank you. Through the mayor, all of our neighbors are really great to work with. We don't have any issues in the fire service with creating boundary agreements, automatic gate agreements. Increasing the boundaries in some of those agreements, because we're getting into those fringe rural areas, there's probably very little advantage because you're dealing with smaller properties. We do look at the travel distances and the time to arrive at those locations, and typically those agreements are determined by that. You know, where is that sort of halfway point where we're both kind of meeting in the middle, and that's how we arrive at those boundary agreements typically. So we do look at them each time and just have that discussion. In this particular case, we didn't see any need to change anything.
Any other consent agenda items, councillors? No? Okay. In that case, I'd look for a mover and a seconder to pass all consent agenda items from 11.1 through to 11.6. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. Now we will go on to report 12.1. And if I could get the recommendation on the floor with a mover, moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. And again, this recommendation is that council direct staff to bring back a council remuneration review policy to the November committee meeting of the whole as per the report in COR-2025-46. So I will invite our Manager of Legislative Services, Clerk Boss, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. The recommendation on the floor this evening is about directing staff to prepare a formalized periodic process by which the Township of Wilmot will review the salaries, benefits, and expenses paid to elected officials. This review will aim to ensure compensation is fair, comparable to other municipalities, and aligns with changes in the local economy and relevant legislation. This recommendation and the mayoral direction, just to be clear, are not budget decisions. Should any changes in council remuneration be recommended for the 2026 to 2030 term of council, it will be captured in the budget process. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Clerk Boss? Okay, seeing none. As I mentioned, we do have Barry Wolf, who I believe has a presentation. Barry, as you know, you will have 7 minutes, and please just keep to that and on topic, and I'll turn it over to you.
I hope you listen quickly. This report addresses a requested review of council compensation. It's timely, as it is appropriate that each council reviews its compensation each term. A reasonable observer might opine, though, that the present council is considering the potential compensation value of as yet untested future council rather than conducting a compensation-led performance assessment of its own performance, somewhat of a conundrum. It's my opinion that councillors and the CO are an investment that residents are making for our own well-being. Leadership of the Corporation of the Township of Wilmot's responsibility per the OMA of this Council of Mayor and 5 ward councillors. If one took Wilmot's population and divided by the 6 councillors, you got the chart. Each of you is supposed to represent somewhere around 3,571 residents each. However, in fact, each one of you represents every one of us, each one of us. A councillor is elected in a ward which represents all citizens of the township. Council is responsible for the development and accountability for implementation of all policies and administrative procedures to execute the needs and interests of all residents. We, taxpayers, are investing in our own success by investing in you. This report is a fairly comprehensive review of some characteristics of comparable municipalities. The comparators chosen are much closer to what Wilmot looks like than previous municipality comparators submitted in previous reports to Council. Places like Oakville, Brampton, Halton Hills. Charts 3 and 4 outline some comparative context for decision making. Caitlin's done a lot of research. I have added a column for CAOs in comparator municipalities because a CAO is also a critical investment towards a municipality's success. Wilmot citizens are investing in a council and a CAO, an administrative culture shift, an optimum use of our resources to achieve goals described through transparency and accountability processors. Taxpayers are investing in all of you to perform. I invite staff in future to consider some additional characteristics and those around the mill rate tax differentials, because different municipalities with different percentages of tax mill rates have advantageous or disadvantageous results based upon commercial industrial assessment generating more or less resident, you know how that goes. So, how does Council decide what an optimum compensation scale should be in Wilmot going forward? First of all, I'm personally pleased that Wilmot is not hiring another outside consultant, but is doing the work itself. Thank you for that. Charts 2 and 3 imply that discovering what everyone else is doing and follow their lead is a strategy. It's also a strategy used by lemmings. Perhaps I can suggest an alternative strategy. Step 1, I suggest that staff might conduct a what-if analysis, considering various levels of potential compensation increases, 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever, and do the calculations of what that potential increase cost for each option would be above the present cost. Then you've got valid data as a basis for consideration. Step 2, consider cost offsets. If a potential increase in council compensation cost is X, then how can we reduce other present costs, or how can we, and this is the main point of my questions, generate increases in future revenues to offset that compensation and other council expenses? A revenue increase is not restricted to asking taxpayers for more. A revenue increase needs to expand the size of its revenue pie by expanding new revenue sources. Capitalism is based on expansion, continual growth. More people, more new ideas, more new products, more new solutions, more new ideas. More new growth means more revenue. Please ask me after I'm done for some specific suggestions how Wilmot Township could add new revenue sources. Step 3, and this is the difficult part, requires council introspection. If a corporation is considering increasing its compensation expenditures, then it needs to consider what added value council has brought to the corporation during this term and potentially into the next term. How has council made life better in Wilmot? How has it increased Wilmot's net worth in capital dollar value, but also in social and environmental ambiance? I suggest that the worth of a council and its administrative senior staff is based on their performance. What have they achieved? What is council's conclusion about how much its efforts have improved the value of life in Wilmot? If after analysis you conclude that things are no better for residents, then that tells you something about compensation increases. If there's a list of things that council can generate to indicate that it has made specific, observable, measurable improvements to the value of life in Wilmot, then council has small or larger successes that it needs to celebrate internally. Those internal celebrations will bring pride to all staff and councillors. Then internal pride brings confidence. That internal confidence needs to be advertised to the residents of Wilmot. That pride and confidence needs to spread to residents and will develop increased trust by residents. Then maybe citizens can agree to reward you with appropriate financial compensation, and maybe even consider re-electing those from among you. It's my opinion that council's compensation is based upon performance. And I call these two things excuses. One, we haven't had a raise in 2 years, so we deserve an increase. Or alternatively, we have a huge corporate debt load, so we must set an example of austerity. No increase. In my opinion, neither one should apply in determining compensation. The decision is not an automatic time-connected yes or no excuses. Perfection is not the process. I'm suggesting several ways that council can increase its revenues, and that's tied to compensation and other things. Please ask me for some specific ideas of how I suggest we increase revenue here. I got 15 seconds left. Go for it.
Are you good with?
Well,
Yes.
I can start, but I'm going to
Well-
let somebody ask me for a brief list.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Barry. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, thank you, Barry. I'll bite. I'm all ears, because if there's a
Okay.
way to increase revenue and you have ideas that would be useful, I would appreciate them.
This will be a part of the script that I will be submitting tomorrow to Caitlin. It'll all be detailed in what you're hearing. I'm going to, as much as I can. The first category is reduce expenditures and revenue shrinkage. 5 suggestions. Bring tax revenue on stream faster from residential developments being completed. Suggestions. The Prime Minister's Path could be a revenue-generating tourist attraction. Suggestions. Here's the last two that I think are the biggies. Economic Development Officer Part 1 and Economic Development Officer Parts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. On a Saturday afternoon, I was sitting on my back patio imagining, how can Wilmot Township create value-added revenue here in Wilmot? Here's what I got after only 1/2 glass of wine. Number 1, what are the basic essentials that all people need? Answers: air, water, food, clothing, shelter. Which ones are least affected in need or demand by changes in economic conditions? Answers: air, water, and food. Raise your hand or nod your head if you recognize these brands' names. It's one of those, it's real easy. Nestle's, Kellogg's, Schneider's, Wilmot's, Wendy's, Apple, Wilmot's, Kraft, McDonald's, Wilmot's, John Deere. You got my point. There's a brand name you don't recognize. It's because it doesn't exist yet. But it can. Let's review the 3 basic essentials: air, water, and food. We in Wilmot do not need to profit on air or water, but what about food? How about food items such as sweet corn, varieties of beans, peas, squash? What else do we grow here or can grow here in Wilmot? We can make a list of fresh foods that can be processed locally. How do we add value that can generate revenue in Wilmot based on leveraging the value of food with some of the added value revenue streaming into this township's coffers? Answer: process those raw foods into finished products here in Wilmot. And I admit it, I stole the idea from Strathroy-Caradoc. Would you put it on chart 4 there, please? Strathroy-Caradoc, and from Dashwood. Strathroy, chart 4. That's the blue one. Oh, sorry, I'm a mistake. It's chart 2. It's the blue one. Yeah. There's 2 columns. One's highlight. You've got that in front of you. One is Wilmot, and the other is Strathroy-Caradoc. If you look at the population of Wilmot, it's 21.4. Strathroy-Caradoc, 23.8. Population difference, 11%. You've hopefully read this before, so you see the difference in the property taxation. Strathroy-Caradoc, 11% more people, but 118% larger taxes. 161% greater tax revenue. What are they doing that we're not doing? Well, one of the things they've got is my idea.
Barry.
You built a refrigerated frozen food processing plant.
I understand where you're going, and I know that you said that you're going to be sending this to all of council tomorrow in your summary. I would just ask, because this is technically about the policy on staff bringing forward a remuneration policy for council, that both to council and yourself, we could please stick to that for the reason of tonight's meeting. But I do appreciate where you're going, and I look forward to reading your recommendations in writing tomorrow.
And with due respect, I did say that compensation would be a reflection of what you produce. It's
can offset. I understand what you're saying.
Here's how you
right now, we're talking about a policy, though, we aren't talking about the actual remuneration. We're talking about staff bringing back in a time cycle, if they do that once a term, twice a term, what that looks like for council to review. So I would just ask that.
Instead of the comparators, I'm suggesting that there are some other things that might be in that policy. Thanks very much. And
I appreciate that. Are there any
later.
other questions on the policy component? Councillor Dunstall does have a question for you still, Barry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And Barry, you and I don't agree on a lot of things, but there's a lot of stuff in your report that I did agree with, especially that the municipalities face unique disadvantages. And I want to be clear that I'm not opposed to the regular transparent policy reviewing for council remuneration. Thank you. I believe it's good governance. But I cannot ignore the timing of this. And we just had our budget review or meeting with our constituents. And some of them shared with me that they believe the council had made some self-serving decisions on the last budget. And to now bring this forward raises the possibility of council pay and even moving the mayor's role to full-time while taxpayers are facing a 36% levy over 4 years, only reinforces that perception. And last year we had council object to cost of living for staff, and now we're discussing potentially increasing for ourselves in the very next term, and that looks inconsistent, and it looks self-serving regardless of whether it's technically in 2026 or not. And Barry's point is important. Wilmot is not Toronto, Kitchener, or Cambridge, and we're a rural municipality, and we have the lowest ratio of businesses to our residents, so the majority of our tax burden is on our residents, and with so many struggling with affordability, it really, the appearance that we're even putting this on the table at this particular time, in my view, is tone deaf. So while I support the clear policy framework for our council, I believe that maintaining the status quo today would send the wrong message to the people that we serve if we don't maintain it. Thank you.
I thank you for that comment, and I would just point out that on that chart number 4, I've identified in Wilmot that it costs me $1.84 a year for the mayor, and it costs me $1.02 for each of you a year. So you add that together, that's $6.94. I spend more than that on licorice in 2 weeks. I'll bet people pay more than that for 1 cup of specialty coffee without the donut. And you're getting you for a year for $6.94? That's a deal.
But with all due respect, there are some people that don't buy fancy coffees.
All right, we're not going to get into a debate. Thank you very much, Barry, for coming and delegating. I do just want to add clarity again, which reiterates what the clerk was saying. This direction was not brought necessarily as a budget item, and right now we are not at all discussing budget or even the increase. We are talking about a governance policy to annually or 4 times in a council every 4 years, so once a council, term to be reviewing for the future council. And I'd like to also reiterate good governance practices, as which the suggestion I believe in the policy would be is that council would be setting for a future council, not for themselves, again to remove the self-serving portrayal or component. So this is really about governance of getting a policy in place that we currently don't have in this municipality and many others do. So again, this item is not a budget decision that we are currently voting on, so I will call the vote. This is for information to come back to, sorry, Councillor Cressman, this was the whole reason that you stayed later. Yes. Please, Councillor Cressman.
So the question I have is twofold. Who's going to be putting this policy together, since this report was authored by our outgoing clerk. So will it be the new clerk? So that's question number one. I would assume it would be tasked to the incoming clerk. The second question is, at what stage does the discussion about a full-time mayor, when is that going to be had? When can this council or future councils, if it's a policy for the next council, when is that debate going to be held? Are we telling, well, we can't debate that, this is a policy review, we're going to wait for the report, and then we can have that debate just as long as the debate occurs? That's all I think that needs to be clear, both to this council and to our constituents, because I think, quite honestly, I think the ability, and I entered the motion that flatlined our salaries the last number of years. I do not feel comfortable going to our constituents and asking for double-digit tax increases and seeing our salaries increase as well. To my mind, that just doesn't sit well.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, I will just reiterate that this is currently about the policy. I will have Clerk Boss answer your first part about the work. In regards to the discussion, the reason the information was brought forward was in consideration of being put together in the budget. So those will happen in budget discussions. I can confidently say it's not going to be proposed for the next council that the mayor be a full-time position, but the information was asked for so that an educated decision could be made. So the only way it would come forward is if councillors want to see that as an amendment to the budget. But it would be at the budget time that that discussion would be had. And I will turn it over to Clerk Boss for your part on the work comment.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. Through you, Mayor Salonen. I do have 4 weeks left. And after conducting all the research for the mayoral direction and reviewing these policies, with this carrying through council, I will be the one who will prepare the policy and the report that you will see in front of you at the November Committee of the Whole meeting, and then CAO or Director of Corporate Services or the Deputy Clerk will be able to hopefully see that through the finish line, if that answers your question.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. Not so much a question, more, I guess, a comment in terms of my thoughts. I think it's an important policy to explore, and one that obviously at this point we're committing to seeing what the proposed policy would be. It would still be open for debate, open for change, and I agree. I mean, there's no reason for council at this point to suggest that we should increase our salary, and I agree that holding a freeze, as we've done for the last number of years, actually for our entire term, is appropriate given the circumstances that we've uncovered. However, I think having a policy in place that will dictate with regularity with which reviews will be undertaken and comparators will be undertaken is important. As we all know, I mean, salaries tend to rise, cost of living tends to increase, and I don't want to discount the work that we do here, but at the end of the day, there is remuneration for the work that we do. And if we fail to put in place a proper policy, then moving forward, potentially there's an opportunity that it's not reviewed in a timely manner, or that it doesn't come up with any regularity. What I'm looking for in this is that it will at least set out on a regular planned schedule with review when this will occur and how it will occur. So I think it's important that it at least gets done and undertaken. And again, this is not agreeing to any more money at this point. This is not making any adjustments. And of course, even if a policy were to come forward, present a report and suggest that council see a pay increase, it would still rest with council at budget time to ultimately make that decision as to whether or not to accept. So I think for the purposes of putting in a strong policy, I would be very curious to see what comes back. So from that perspective, I'm at least in favor of seeing this through to have the work on the table. Whether or not we choose to adopt, that's for a future discussion.
Any other councillors, Stu?
Thank you. I just wanted to add on a further comment that voting in favor of this policy does not say we're going to give ourselves a raise. It's just essentially the way I was been thinking about it is there's never a right time to really have this discussion, where with this policy moving forward with future councils, it'll be baked in that yearly or twice in a term they can have that conversation and make the decision there if they choose to do a raise or not. This is essentially just having a policy, as my fellow councillors have said, of good governance, of setting a time and place to have this review, and it still rests on the councillors and the mayor at the time to take the recommendation of staff or not. But I did want to make it abundantly clear that voting in favor of this is not saying we are going to give ourselves a raise or we're in favor of giving a raise. It's just to set the policy. When the policy comes forward, that's when you make your decision of what the staff recommendations are from there.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. So yes, again, to be explicitly clear, this is about a policy for review for information to come forward to council on a set out and defined basis. The policy will be coming forward November 4th, pending that this is approved. This is not actually about council compensation changes being made. That is not on discussion right now at this point in time. That would be a part of the budget discussions. Seeing no other questions or comments, I will call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that carries 5-1. And on to report 12.2. And Councillor Cressman, we would love for you to stay, but also understand if you need to slip out at any point, that's fine too.
Maybe my sinuses got cleaned out.
Very good. Okay. Before we jump into 12.2, I did want to make a note, and I forgot about it because it happened, well, I've been aware of it for a while, but I wanted to formally welcome interim acting director Martin around the Horseshoe. For those, I know that all of council's aware, but for those in the public who aren't, as we do currently have a vacancy in our director of Corporate Services, Director Okrafka has agreed to step out of his regular role over in the Development Services and step in as interim Director of Corporate Services, and then Director Martin has agreed to step up from his managing role in development and up to interim director for the time being. So very happy to see you around the Horseshoe, and thank you very much also to Director Okrafka for being accommodating, and to everyone on CLC for the continued work that you guys do. So just wanted to note that change. I realize not everyone may know who has joined us around the Horseshoe, and so that note aside, on to 12.2, this is the affiliation policy for minor sports discounts, and noting Councillor Martin's conflict of interest, we will have the first vote for everything except for the Firebirds, and then we will hold a second vote for the Firebirds. So the first recommendation is that Council approve the revised community services affiliation policy as attached to report CS-2025-12, and that council be directed to continue the current facility use subsidies, minor sport discount at 35%, and in-kind staff costs for legacy facility booking by affiliated groups and special events, save and except for the New Hamburg Firebirds taking place at the township facilities in 2026. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. And I will invite our Director of Community Services, Chris Cortania, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. Township has a strong history of supporting community groups, service clubs, sporting associations, and special event organizers in their efforts to provide recreation, leisure, and special events to the community. Without adequate levels of township support for these groups, there would be fewer opportunities for residents of the township to engage in activities with friends, neighbors, and visitors to the community. Staff are seeking approval of the revised affiliation policy and same levels of discounted use and in-kind staff support for both special events and affiliated use in 2026. Happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you very much, Director. Any questions or comments? It has not changed from when we saw it at committee. Councillor Martin?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, just to confirm that we say publicly, because I think there was some misunderstanding at first, and that came up in the committee of the whole. People worried that the subsidies were going to be taken away, but in fact this recommendation is saying that we will continue with the subsidies. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that publicly.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and that carries unanimously. And now we will have the second one. The recommendation is that staff be directed to continue the current facility use subsidy minor sports discount at 35% and in-kind staff costs for legacy facility bookings by affiliated groups and special events for the New Hamburg Firebirds taking place at the Township of Wilmot facilities in 2026. May I have a mover for this one? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that carries unanimously. On to 12.3, and we also saw this one at committee, but it is recommended that in accordance with section 4.3.1 of the committee governance policy GP-23-01, the Wilmot Canada Day event task force be dissolved, and that council direct staff to work with local organizations and community groups on planning, implementing, and executing an inclusive Canada Day celebration event, which normally consists of one focal event on July 1st. May I have a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. And I will invite again our Director Catania to introduce this report.
Thank you again, Mayor Salonen. The Canada Day Event Task Force has played a pivotal role in the planning and delivery of the Canada Day celebrations for both 2024 and 2025. The dedication, hard work, and enthusiasm of the task force members has been instrumental in the success of these events, and staff would like to acknowledge and express appreciation for the significant contribution made by all members of the task force. This report outlines the successes of the past events, identifies opportunities for continued improvement, and presents a recommendation to transition the Canada Day event to a staff-led approach. Under this new approach, staff would work collaboratively closely with these local organizations and community groups to plan, coordinate, and deliver an inclusive and community-focused celebration. This recommendation is informed by the feedback from both task force members and staff, highlighting the potential for improved coordination and streamlined processes. A staff-led approach will enhance operational efficiency while maintaining a strong community engagement and community support. Happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Director Catania, if you could make it clear, I've had some volunteers reach out and they're concerned that they won't be involved anymore, and they're concerned that the township is taking over and we're not going to be using volunteers. And so I just want to make sure, and you talked about community groups, but I've had individuals who were on that council, and they seem to have concerns. I understand why it happened. I know that the people who were on that committee felt their hands were tied and they couldn't communicate. But I have had 3 people reach out to me and just say to me they really enjoyed participating and wanted to make sure that they would be able to again. So I just want to have that clarified by you.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to Councillor Dunstall, that is correct. We as staff and as a township will be involving all of our community groups that are part of Canada Day. Others that have not been a part of it maybe in the past will still be included if they choose to participate. Members of the Canada Day Task Force, even if they're sitting as individual residents, they will definitely be involved and asked to come back in a capacity where, especially when we look at the day of, there are some specialty items that when it comes to running certain events or booths, we want the whole community to be involved.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, as a follow-up to Councillor Dunstall's question, and Director Catania, you're welcome to add any further comments. It's my understanding, having been on the task force, and one of the questions that I had raised in the committee of the whole and elsewhere was, what about fundraising? We did a great job. The 2 people working on fundraising, they did Abby and Susan. They did a wonderful job in fundraising, and it's my understanding that that kind of thing would continue, that the hope is that we would have volunteers and they would continue in that capacity. It has more to do with the structure of the task force as opposed to the workings of how it can come into being. And so, Director Catania, feel free to correct any of my comments.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Martin. Councillor, that is correct. No different than when we look at our service providers in the community. We obviously have staff, township staff, that do run some programming, but we have complementary programming, health, wellness, that type of thing that are being run out there by service groups, community groups. So no different here when we look at the Canada Day task force and even some of the individual members where they might have an expertise in looking at soliciting for sponsorship or donations. Even though it's a township-led event, we would welcome that expertise to help look at offsetting those costs and making it a more cost-recoverable event.
Any other questions or comments on this, Councillor? Councillor Martin?
Through you, Mayor Sallin, I just wanted to put out there that any member of council could be on the dunk tank for next year.
Happy to hear that you're already recruiting for that. Very good. And I just again would like to reiterate my gratitude to everybody who's been a part of Canada Day, whether formally on the committee, staff, of course, who help put on, and community members, both who volunteer and those who come out. And we look forward to the third iteration, but this very technical item of the committee structure, we're just going to adjust based off of feedback. Obviously pending that it passes, but thank you again for all of the work and looking forward to Canada Day for 2026. With that, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to report 12.4, and this is the sidewalk policy update. The recommendation is that the report IS-2025-39 sidewalk policy update be received for information, and that council adopt the sidewalk policy as attached to this report. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, and I will invite Acting Director of Infrastructure Services to introduce this report. Director Vanderwall.
Thank you, Mayor Sallinen. At the previous Committee of the Whole, staff had recommended that any replacement of sidewalk be to current AODA standards, that being 1.5 meters. Council requested the policy be revised such that the sidewalks under our minimum maintenance standards be replaced at current size. Based on this request, we added two definitions to be consistent with the legislation. The one definition being redeveloped, a planned significant alteration to public spaces, but does not include maintenance activities, environmental mitigation, or environmental restoration. That required a definition of maintenance, which is repair or replacement of a sidewalk as required under our minimum maintenance standards, or as required for the repair or replacement of sanitary or storm laterals, water services, or utilities within the right-of-way where the sanitary, storm, water service are at the same location and serve the same purpose, and not providing a significant increase in capacity or service. What this revised policy therefore will do is make all our sidewalk repairs back to the existing size. However, where there is a new development, it will be required as per the legislation to be increased to the current standards of the AODA. I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, councillors? Okay. Oh, Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Sallinen, to Director Vanderwall. We've had some conversation about people asking for accessible parking and how that intersects with the sidewalk. And I'm not sure if this is the proper topic to put it in the Committee of the Whole. I'd also asked a question about accessible parking or usage. So is it fair to say that in the budget is where we need to, if we're trying to increase our accessibility, then we need to add more money to the budget? Is that a fair question to ask in this topic?
I think it's getting a bit away from the sidewalk policy. I will allow a quick response, whether that just be that you'll follow up, but I do think that is really deviating from the sidewalk policy itself.
Through the Mayor, the budget that we had would be under repair, so we do not have additional budget for increasing accessibility.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. We do have a registered delegation for bylaw 13.5, so I will invite Barry back up. And again, as you know, you will have 7 minutes. And just for everybody who is aware, 13.5 is the bylaw appointing acting deputy treasurers, both CAO Wilmer and now interim acting corporate services director Okrafka.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to Director Martin. And congratulations to Director Okrafka. And congratulations to CAO Wilmer. Personally, I'm of the opinion that great leadership is reflected when the CAO speaks the least and allows his skilled directors to demonstrate their expertise. And I haven't heard a word from him yet tonight, so he's doing great. I also look forward to... I've just been bleeped. I also look forward to council passing this bylaw, but I've got a couple of questions. It's an acting role. When does the acting role end? 2, who's going to be doing the financial preparations and all of that kind of stuff with skilled expertise in providing the budget? 3, who is the corporation's Chief Financial Officer? This is the start of Q4 and the traditional time of budget prep, provision of support documents, 10-year capital forecasts, fiscal assessments, and all the communication with taxpayers. With the passing of the strong mayor powers having settled upon us, some deadlines for specific actions have come into place. So I'm hoping that the mayor, maybe, or the CEO or somebody, could be a chance to talk, hopefully. Who and how is the budget process going to develop this year? Who makes the decision-making? Who has the power? Over what roles? What role does the mayor play? What role does council play? What role does the taxpayer play? What opportunities input do we have? What's the process? Because we've only got a deputy acting treasurer. I'm looking for a CEO, FO. Am I able to get answers here, or do I have to sit down?
Wow, you took, I think, the shortest amount yet.
So you got time to give me answers, right?
I am happy to answer those, as I know others have those questions as well. And I will let CAO Wilmer jump in when and if he sees fit. In terms of when does the acting end, that depends on recruitment, which right now is lying with our CAO in terms of proceeding. Also, I am providing input where asked, but he is running that as the CAO. And the interim is really just to give stability to staff, as we are missing some key roles in that element, so just making sure that the ship continues sailing for the interim. In terms of who is doing budget, also currently we are speaking CLT-wise, and there should be further information really soon, but I can let you know we are ensuring it will be somebody with financial qualifications.
What does CLT-wise mean?
Corporate leadership team. So this side of the horseshoe.
Oh, senior administration team. Okay, I got it. All right.
In this organization, it's referred to as that. But yes, I know that you have different definitions.
Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's okay. Who is the CFO? At this point in time, we do not have one. The CFO role actually in Wilmot is quite new, and it was only the person, the individual who is the CFO most recently is the only one who's ever held the title of CFO, and as the Municipal Act outlines, we're only required to have a treasurer. So at this moment in time, we do not have a CFO in this organization. That is also part of the consideration that is being made in the posting of that position as to if it will be CFO or treasurer. But still, qualifications and job description essentially is remaining the same, perhaps a few tweaks or wording, so don't quote me if you see a slightly different posting than in previous. And then key financial dates, our CAO did mention, I think it was at last committee of the whole, that due to some changes of key financial people in the organization no longer being with us, that those dates that we had set in our calendar, and council was also made aware, for the budget this year have slightly been delayed probably, and that is just sheerly from capacity of having people to do them. Also, all of our directors still put together their budgets and add those into the bigger budget. But again, we will have financially certified individuals who will be doing it. I just don't have the name for you at this exact moment in time. And once we have that, that will be public information.
So what was the role of citizens in this process? I missed it?
Nope, I missed answering that part, sorry. Role of citizens. So this goes back to provincial legislation. Our councillors have all or will be hosting town halls in terms of engagement. Again, continued engagement is also, you can reach out to any of us at any point in time. And councillors have already fed in ideas, as well as I've fed in ideas to the budget that we've heard from residents. That's one way. And then continuing with the new legislation, it has slightly altered in that once the budget is tabled, it's not like budget processes that we've had before. We won't be going through capital project item by item and saying yay or nay as a council. So really getting your comments in and your ideas of what you would or wouldn't like to see prioritized happens in this time period before it is tabled and brought forward. Again, why we're having council engagement right now with their town halls. And the public also were taking continued comments from the last budget process, as we did have very fruitful comments and good insight from there as well, are feeding into the budget element. Of course, everything still happens with budget meetings, and there will be a time for a community budget meeting that council will hear. But going back to the presentation that we had from our lawyer about strong mayor's powers in general, because I did ask, what does this mean? He did outline that once the budget is tabled, that is essentially how the budget is going to be, unless there is 2/3 vote on council to make an amendment to the budget.
Okay, that last part was the one that I hadn't heard the answer to. If I may make a friendly suggestion.
Sure.
Not many people swim in the weeds like I do. And maybe it would be appropriate, given the context of emotional intensity in previous experiences with budget processing here, that maybe your communication officer, in conjunction with yourself and your CAO, Finance and Harold, Mr. Okrafka, release some sort of a communication, information outline to the public, because it's Q4 and we're looking and we want to have a say, but we want to know the rules to do it appropriately, positively, encouragingly, successfully. I just make that request.
Thank you, and
Thank
we
you.
will certainly do our best to continue to amplify positive ways, as you said, for people to engage. Doesn't mean that you can't have critiques, but positive ways for people to engage.
Did the CAO want to see anything? Good man.
Okay. Were there any other questions or comments for that? Councillor Cressman?
Excuse me. Yes, through you, Mayor, to Clerk Boss. Is, under the strong mayor power, is there all or none in terms of budget preparation? In other words, for those mayors that have chosen not to exercise strong mayor powers, does the old process still exist? Is there a portion of the old process, like can you have some input from the mayor and some of the old process? I'm just, I guess, as a councillor who's looking at a public input meeting on the 9th of October, I'm asking myself the question, an input on what? Because usually budgets look at alternatives. you look at choices. You look at, you know, last year we had to choose between certain assets, whether we could stretch them another year, and here we are, I'm going to my meeting with a blank sheet of paper and saying, what do you want? And I know what they're going to say if I was asked that question. I don't want a big tax increase. Beyond that, what do I have to offer in terms of alternatives? And what can I expect from, so I'm just looking at what is the legislation, I guess that's going back to the question at hand. What does the legislation allow? You know, is it full bore, the mayor shall, or the mayor can, or must?
Thank you, Councillor Cressman. Through you, Mayor Salonen. The legislation reads that the mayor must, and it is a duty of being a strong mayor within Ontario. Where mayors may choose to exercise it would be, I know some are going to default to February 1st, which then, if they have not presented a budget by then, it returns to the hands of council as a whole, and they can go through that process. That decision rests solely with the mayor, but it is within their duties that they must prepare and propose a budget for consideration. You'll see throughout the province that strong mayors are handling the budget preparations differently, but that's up to the individual themselves how they would like to. It is a very tight timeline. It is 55 days from the presentation of it to approval. I would say there is 30 days in there for council to review and meet and make any amendments with a 2/3 majority to that. So that is still built into the process where, as a council, you will get the opportunity to propose amendments to what is presented. Thank you.
And if I may just add on to that, and keeping in mind, I get that we've had a lot of changes to our process over time due to changes in staffing, but I have really worked on expanding, even having council input at the start of the budget process, which we all met with financial staff one-on-one. I was also there and a few other key staff, but that was part that has fed into what will be reflected in the budget, as well as it was a part of the schedule that we agreed to and still intend to have. It just will be at a different timeline now as it's been pushed. Having council also have input after staff have prepared their budgets, and council will all independently, so no decisions are being made behind closed doors, but independently councillors will have an opportunity to see roughly where the budget is headed, and then also again have another meeting with us to make input. So really my intent and goal, I'm trying my best to frame it off of how City of Kitchener has done it, because I've heard both from councillors and their mayor there that they've had good success, that everyone feels on council quite confident as what is then being tabled and put forward. That they, in the 2 years that they've had strong mayor's powers there, not had to actually make amendments or any vetoes because council's been brought along on the process. So that is still the full intent. Again, we've had timeline changes. If you want suggestions for your budget, other than just saying, what do you want? Keeping in mind, I intend, and this comes out of both our last budget process, but also the meetings one-on-one that councillors had. I do intend that we'll have the 9% for capital that we agreed to last year still in there. So we already know it's starting at 9%. And then I believe I heard echoed from pretty well everyone around the table that we want to keep as tight as possible, but still being able to maintain our day-to-day responsibilities. So that is kind of the direction that we're going. Of course, the budget isn't coming out of thin air either, so anything off of last year's budget, either that did not happen. I know Mr. Wolf referenced an economic development officer in his conversation, so things like that you could certainly discuss with and get feedback to be able to then again feed into the process when we have those additional meetings, would be my suggestions.
Thank you very much. That clarifies it a little bit in terms of it. And it's a new process to us all and to our constituents, and I guess that's That's my concern, is that they're going in, maybe, well, I know they're going in with a lot of questions. And I agree. I think the more we can roll out to them and provide information, and I realize in a way we're doing this with no deference to the people who have accepted different enacting responsibilities, but in a way we're doing it with one hand tied behind our back. It's not our center of the plate normal responsibility, but then maybe I'm not fully aware of the expertise of all of our staff, and so thank you again for stepping in the breach to our staff.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. Did you mention that there was going to be a public meeting that our constituents could come here and make? Thank you.
Yes, that is still part of the process that council agreed to. And again, it's just the dates have changed, but we still intend to stick to the principle of what was outlined in that calendar. And that includes after the table is budgeted, or oh my goodness, after the budget is tabled, that council is going to have an evening, much like we have in the past, where delegates can come speak to council. Any other questions or comments on that bylaw? Seeing none, I would look for a mover and a seconder to pass all of the bylaws on our agenda tonight, which is 13.1 through to 13.7. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. We do have one notice of motion this evening, and this is Councillor Martin's motion regarding the expansion of the Township of Wilmot's recycling program. And I will invite Councillor Martin to introduce his report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen, and through you, Mayor Salonen. A couple of comments, and then I'll read the motion. I do, and I have discussed this with Director Catania to make sure that the timeline will fit within your timeline, what's reasonable. So it's a request for information to come back as to what it would cost to have recycling at all of our facilities, and including looking at township events as well. As an example, on Canada Day, I did bring 2 green bins of my own, set them out and took them home and sorted it to make sure that it was in proper locations. But I do think that we could benefit from our township contributing more to recycling in terms of preserving our environment. So whereas the Township of Wilmot 2025 to 2027 Strategic Action Plan, Action Item 3.3 is protecting our natural environment, and whereas recycling helps reduce the strain on our landfills and contributes positively to environmental protection, and whereas the Township supports household recycling through the Region of Waterloo Waste Management Program, and whereas the Township subcontracts waste and recycling services at our facilities and properties, and whereas recycling bins are available at several but not all Township-owned facilities and properties, now therefore be it resolved that staff report back to Council at the November Committee of the Whole meeting concerning the cost and staff time involved in the expansion of our recycling program at Township-owned facilities and properties, and that the report includes information on the feasibility of a full recycling program across all Township properties, all Township-run events, and all events held at the rented Township facilities.
Thank you. Would there be a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor Sadhu. And Councillor Sadhu, did you want to speak to it as a seconder? Nope. And are there any questions or comments? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, just a question to Councillor Martin. Specifically, which areas are in deficit of a full recycling program most? Is it the green waste, or I would assume we would have bottles and can recycling at most of our facilities? Specifically, what do you see as the gap here in a full program?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Salonen, to Councillor Cressman. I go to Township properties and I don't see recycling bins at all the locations. And so if people want to put cans or bottles somewhere into a recycling bin, there isn't one. I also see some locations where paper towels, for example, which can go into the green bin, in the washrooms when people are using paper towels for drying their hands. But there's not always a location for people to put the paper towels that could go to green bins. And so we are contributing to our landfills by not giving the opportunity to put cans, bottles into recycling as well as compostable thing. Same is also true with green bins. Like Canada Day, I had my 2 green bins. So for 8,000 people, there were 2 little green bins. And so lots of food waste, be that pizza crusts, be that people who didn't like their ice cream, be that piece of cake that they didn't like, all goes into the garbage, contributes to our landfill. So those would be examples that I think. And Director Catania, if you want to correct me or add to anything, I'm happy to have your input.
Through Mayor Salonen to Councillor Martin, no, correct. There are some potential gaps, but as noted in the notice of motion as well, we'll investigate further on what Council's asking for.
Any other, Councillor Buckinson?
Through the chair, I would just say that I suppose it's very timely given that there are some ongoing changes with waste collection in the region. So hopefully there will be some synergies or some areas where we can improve. We'll look forward to hearing back.
Any other questions? Councillor Cressman, was that going to make a comment there?
Well, just through you, Mayor, I would assume any changes that we would make, we would be scaling up to the bigger containers that wouldn't be buying the size of the smaller containers. I think there's bigger green bin containers and bigger, I don't know if there is any for industrial. I guess we'll wait. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll wait for the report. Thank you.
I did just have a question, just because we've started talking about food waste now. Are you specifically talking about blue bin recycling programs, or are you hoping that this report will also reflect food waste diversion through green bin?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I guess I was hoping that it would include green bin food waste as well, and if I haven't been clear enough, then maybe we need to add clarity to the motion.
I think staff can take that as direction if this is approved. Yes. So staff know the intent of that now. And the only other thing that I would just say, although that slightly changes it, don't need to ask for the wording change I was going to, but did just want to note blue bin recycling now at your home is no longer done by the region of Waterloo under provincial legislation changes. That is now done by a group that the producer group that the province has identified. So just noting that is a separate thing. So when we are talking about the changes to waste management at the region, you will notice that blue bins will not be included in that. But other than that, I don't see any other questions or comments. Councillor Cressman.
Yes, this is, again, maybe getting into the, well, I was going to say the weeds, but it might be the refuse. The question is, do we expect township staff to separate, because the tendency at large events is to not do the proper separation. I would assume we would provide, they would provide a report that would reflect the opportunity for the residents of the township or the people attending events to separate as best possible, but they're not going to go through garbage. We expect staff to go through garbage and separate. Although I would congratulate you on doing that.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, it's not my intent to put any staff at risk. And so, no, I'm not asking staff to sort through the bins because I realize that there's a safety concern, and that's not my intent. What I do personally, that's something different, but yeah.
Director Catania. I was about to say Director Chris. Oh my goodness.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I think, like as I mentioned before, we will come back with a comprehensive report for the November Committee of the Whole. Just in short, yeah, there would be a resourcing piece if we were looking at staff to actually look at separating out that waste, recycling, green bid piece. I know that I think most people understand that a lot of it is education and really public education, because if we look at contamination, then that's an issue obviously in itself when it comes to the waste recycling program. But we'll put the information together for council to see for information as well when it comes to the costs that are associated and potential resourcing on making sure that something can be viable.
Great. Seeing no other questions or comments, I will call the vote. All those in favor, and that carries unanimously. And I do have just a few quick announcements. The biggest one of note is tomorrow is September 30th, which is National Truth and Reconciliation Day. Also, some people call it Orange Shirt Day. And this is really a day to both a national day of mourning, but also of reflection and understanding of our Indigenous, of the Indigenous populations across Canada, and understanding the Truth and Reconciliation Acts and working towards that. Wilmot will be hosting its walk again this year. However, it is in a different format, both due to feedback and resourcing. So this year it will be a self-guided tour through the Schmidt Woods, and it will be accessible between sunrise and sunset. So any point in the day, I encourage you to go out to the Schmidt's Woods, and we will have the 94 calls to truth and reconciliation along part of the path there for you to walk, learn, and reflect. We also have upcoming on this Saturday, October the 4th, our Community Fire Safety Day, and that is being put on by Chief Leeson and his team of all of our firefighters in the township, and that'll be at the New Hamburg Community Centre. So I do encourage everyone to make their way out. And apart from that, those are all of my announcements for this week, but we'll go to Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I don't know if I miss saying that all the time, and I'm not sure if I have to say it during announcements. But as I indicated earlier, Thursday, October the 9th, at the Newton Community Centre is a chance for residents to come in and make suggestions on the upcoming budget. There's as was indicated this evening, there's several things that are known, and then as well, I think we will have, for those interested, there will be a process, and as much detail around the process will be provided, and some key pieces of information will be identified when they will be coming out, or approximate time that they will be coming out, especially the corporate leadership team in terms of the information from them and the mayor. So I think it's an opportunity to provide some input. It's a little different than having a presented budget and going out and providing information around it. But I think one of the things that I would say to Barry that I made in my public presentation last year was the fact that we have a much higher percentage, 83.7 or something like that, residential tax base compared to the 73, 74 that Woolwich and North Dumfries have, and Wellesley. So we are very much a bedroom community, and it again shines the spotlight on the fact that we have to get more commercial and industrial space into this township as a tax base. And it also provides employment closer to home. So it's a drum I've been beating for a while, but we have to keep looking at alternatives. And anyhow, hopefully that economic development aid individual close to home. So very good.
Any other announcements, councillors? Okay, seeing none, we do have business arising from closed. The motion is that council directs staff to proceed as directed. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Stew. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. Confirmatory bylaw, mover? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. And adjournment, moved by Councillor Crespin very vigorously, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favour? That carries unanimously. Have a great night and thank you.